Hi guys, Mr. Hescox back, going over our new section. We're going to look in today on scientific method and traits of a scientist. First things first, what is an adaptation? This is what we covered last time. An adaptation is anything that helps an organism survive in its environment. This could be camouflage, it could be thorns on a rose, it could be fur on a polar bear. Those would be examples, not the definition of an adaptation. We're going to read Roman numeral 38 to Roman numeral 41, and tonight's homework is to write 3 questions that you could test. So just the questions that you could test in your experiment. When you start thinking about science, you think, what is a scientist? I want you to take a second right now and write 5 things you expect a scientist to do. What do you picture of that scientist and how would he look? Did you see the scientist with beakers? Did you see him blowing things up? Did you see experiments? Is he in a lab? Is he wearing a lab coat? Is it always a man to be a scientist? Could it be a woman? Absolutely. Is your scientist only a scientist if he's in a lab? Definitely not. There are many scientists who travel outside the labs to nature and the forests and different places to do their job. There are 4 characteristics of a scientist. Those 4 characteristics are you curious? Scientists ask questions. They're asking questions all the time to find the answers. Science is literally a systematic approach to finding the answers. Scientists are observant. They look closely. Curious and observant. Think about little kids. How many of you have a little brother, little sister at home who are always asking questions? They're always watching what you're doing. They're watching everything that you do to see why you're doing it, how you do it, and should they be modeling that type of behavior. Scientists are creative. They're going to come up with new ways to solve problems. They're going to come up with new products. They're going to come up with new, better, and more dynamic cell phones and headphones and all of those other devices that you guys can't live without. Scientists are skeptical. Skeptical means that you don't believe everything you read. Until you have data to back it up, we don't buy the statements. Everything you read on Facebook isn't true. Everything you read on the internet isn't true. Now, if they have the data to support it and that data says what they're saying, then scientists can be swayed. In science, you use the scientific method. Your book calls it the scientific process. The first step, whether you're doing the book version or any other version of scientific method, there's always some sort of a question that we want to find out the answer to. Does Miracle-Gro help plants grow? Well, we probably know the answer to that, but that's just one I came up with off the top of my head. So that's your question. When you determine what is known, this is what I call researching. You research the topic. You want to find out as much as you can about plants, about the nutrients that plants need, about photosynthesis, about the sunlight that plants need, before you worry about testing plants. Then we'll start to plan our investigation. When we plan our investigation, we're going to start with some observations so that we can kind of set up this and know what types of instruments we need. Then we're going to have a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess that answers the question. Okay, I can tell you how many times I've been told a hypothesis is an educated guess. But when you ask students, what is an educated guess? They say, well, I don't know. An educated guess is a prediction. You have your research that other people have done, and based on what you've read, this is what you believe should happen in your experiment. We run our experiment. When we run our experiment, we are testing our hypothesis. There are 2 parts to an experiment. You have the variable and you have the control. The control is the natural condition. So if you're doing plants with Miracle-Gro and plants without Miracle-Gro, one set of plants gets water, the other set of plants gets water with Miracle-Gro added. That's the variable. Variable in this case is the changed. And then what that is what we call a special type. That's called an independent variable because the dependent variable depends upon the independent variable. The dependent variable in that experiment is how much the plant actually grows. The plant will grow differently if it has water or water with Miracle-Gro. So that is the dependent variable. We interpret results. This is always, always, always in some sort of a data table or a graph or a combination of the two. Scientists use graphs, they use graphs, they use graphs. In this course, we will make many graphs on your iPads or on computer that are going to analyze the data that we collect in our experiments in class. It is very important that we learn to organize that data to show or support our statements that we're making. And then finally, the last step your book calls in share the results. I call this your conclusion. Basically, you sum up all of your findings. Was your hypothesis right or wrong? And what data do you have to say, my hypothesis was right, my hypothesis was wrong, and why did it happen? That's the trick. We try and figure out why our experiment worked the way it did. Well, we'll be doing more in class on this, and I hope you guys have learned a little bit more on scientists and the scientific method. I'll be back next time, and be safe.